The message arrived on a crisp autumn morning, lighting up screens and speakers across the globe. It was impossible to miss, a transmission so vivid and intricate it felt alive. In every language humanity had ever devised, from the ancient tongues etched in stone to the most modern of dialects, it spoke a single phrase: "Humans of Earth, you have been deemed worthy." The message wasn't just words. It was a symphony of sound, light, and emotion, resonating at some primal level within us. Satellites tracked its origin to a point far beyond our solar system, where no human probe had yet ventured. It came from them, the ones we had speculated about for centuries. We weren't alone, and now they were reaching out. The world reacted with a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. News anchors struggled to maintain composure, scientists speculated endlessly, and conspiracy theorists basked in validation. Leaders of every nation scrambled to form a unified response, though unity was always a fragile thing for us. Amidst the chaos, one truth became undeniable. The Galactic Concordia was real, and they had chosen us. I remember the first time I saw the ship. It descended from the stratosphere, sleek and otherworldly, shimmering like liquid metal under the sun. It didn't burn or roar like our rockets. It floated, defying every law of physics we understood. As it touched down on a secured airstrip in Geneva, the air around it seemed to ripple, an aura of power that made even the most skeptical pause. From its hull emerged the first of the Concordia's representatives. They were nothing like us, yet strangely familiar, as if they'd stepped out of the collective dreams or nightmares of our species. One moved on 3 spindly legs, its body a tapestry of chitin and luminescent veins. Another floated, translucent and fluid, its edges shifting like the tide. They didn't speak, not at first. Instead, they radiated a presence, an undeniable sense of control. I was there, standing among Earth's delegation, clad in a suit that suddenly felt primitive next to the elegance of their forms. My name is Captain Aaron Marks. Years of service in the military and diplomatic corps had prepared me for many things, but not for this. They introduced themselves through a device that translated their vibrations, scents, and colors into coherent language. "We come in peace," they began, a cliché perhaps, but it was hard to argue with the weight of their arrival. Their message was clear. Humanity had reached a critical point, a moment in its evolution that merited attention from the stars. The Galactic Concordia, a coalition of thousands of species, offered us a place among them. With it came promises of shared knowledge, advanced technology, and interstellar travel. But there was a caveat, one they hinted at but did not fully explain. It was an invitation we could not refuse. To turn it down would be to admit fear, to remain isolated in a universe far larger than we had imagined. But even then, as the celebrations began and the media hailed it as the dawn of a new era, I couldn't shake a feeling deep in my gut. The Concordia smiled, or whatever the equivalent was for creatures without mouths, but behind that smile, I sensed something else, an edge, a calculation. We were not their equals. Not yet. The Concordia's main station was an awe-inspiring sight, a construct so massive it seemed to challenge the very concept of space. From the viewport of the shuttle, I could see its sheer scale, miles upon miles of interconnected structures, glowing with energy patterns that pulsed like veins in a living organism. It was neither chaotic nor overly orderly. It struck a balance that felt alien to human sensibilities. The docking process was seamless, and within moments we were inside. The interior was a labyrinth of sleek corridors, illuminated by a soft, ambient light that seemed to come from nowhere in particular. The air was cool but breathable, slightly metallic, and tinged with faint, unfamiliar scents. We were guided by a Concordian escort, a towering figure with segmented limbs and eyes that moved independently, observing us as we walked. They led us to the Grand Assembly Hall, a cavernous space filled with representatives from species I couldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams. Some floated, others crawled, while a few stood upright like us, though their shapes and forms varied wildly. The air thrummed with a cacophony of sounds, colors, and scents, a symphony of communication that the translators struggled to keep up with. It was overwhelming, yet exhilarating. The Concordia's leader, or at least the one who seemed to hold authority, stepped forward. It was a creature that looked like a giant manta ray, its translucent body pulsating with shifting hues. It spoke, its voice resonating through the chamber. "Humans of Earth, welcome to the Galactic Concordia. As a newly invited species, you are to undergo the integration process." The words were calm, almost soothing, but the weight behind them was unmistakable. I stepped forward, my role as a delegate requiring me to address them. "What does the integration process entail?" Kudruk. The manta-like being's colors shifted subtly, a flicker of amusement, or perhaps something more. "Each species undergoes evaluation to determine their role within the Concordia. It is a test of your survival instincts, adaptability, and capacity to harmonize with others." The room grew still, the implications of the words sinking in. Humanity had always prided itself on its resilience. But this sounded different. This wasn't just a test of intelligence or diplomacy. It was something primal, something impossible but still unmaskable, insanely so. Before we could ask more questions, we were whisked away. Each human delegate was assigned to a separate environment, simulations designed to mimic alien worlds. The first was a jungle, dense with vegetation that glowed faintly in the dark. Predators moved in the shadows, faster than the eye could follow. The second was a desert, its heat so intense it felt like standing inside a furnace, the sand shifting unpredictably beneath our feet. The third was an ocean, its depths hiding creatures with razor-sharp appendages and bioluminescent lures. It didn't take long to understand the purpose of these environments. They weren't just tests. They were designed to break us, to strip us down to our most vulnerable, primal selves. I lost count of the hours, the days. My survival training from Earth was pushed to its limits. I improvised weapons from the jungle's resources, tracked water sources in the desert, and outmaneuvered aquatic predators in the ocean. I wasn't alone in my success. When the tests ended, the survivors returned to the assembly hall. We were battered, bruised, and exhausted, but alive. The Concordian observers whispered among themselves, their sounds and colors betraying confusion. One of them, a being with a crystalline exoskeleton, approached me. Its voice was sharp, almost accusing. "You hunted the predators in the jungle." "Yes," I replied simply. "And in the ocean, you turned the lures against them." "It's right." It stared at me, the light refracting in its crystalline form. "Most species submit. They endure. They do not fight back." I met its gaze, refusing to look away. "We are not most species. Earth breeds predators, not prey." The aftermath of the tests brought a strange kind of silence. Not the absence of sound, but a tension that hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The Concordian observers, once so composed and assured, seemed uneasy. Their movements, their sounds, their very presence carried a hesitation that hadn't been there before. I watched them closely. Each whisper, each exchanged glance between their alien forms revealed more than they likely intended. They hadn't expected us to succeed the way we had. Survival wasn't what surprised them. We had been chosen for our potential, after all. What unsettled them was how we had approached the tests. We hadn't just survived. We had adapted, strategized, and dominated. They didn't understand, not fully. To them, survival was a passive act. It was about endurance, about waiting out the storm and hoping to emerge on the other side. But to us, survival was active. It was a battle, one we fought tooth and nail, one where we didn't just endure, we overcame. I sat with the other human delegates in the quarters assigned to us, a sleek but sterile space that felt more like a containment unit than a living area. The others were buzzing with nervous energy, dissecting every detail of their tests, trying to make sense of what we were facing. "They're testing us to see if we're dangerous," said Maria Singh, a biologist from India who had turned her desert simulation into a fortress of improvised defenses. "Or to see if we're useful," countered Ahmed Rashid, an engineer from Egypt who had turned ocean predators into allies through sheer ingenuity. I stayed silent, my mind replaying the words of the crystalline observer. Most species submit. They do not fight back. We were being evaluated, yes, but not just for our survival. They were trying to determine what we were. Were we prey, like so many others they had encountered, or something else entirely? And the next day we were summoned back to the assembly hall. The Concordian representatives had gathered in greater numbers this time, their presence a wall of shifting forms, colors, and sounds. The manta-like leader floated forward, its luminescent body pulsing with calm hues, though there was an edge to its movements now. "You have exceeded expectations," it said, the translated words echoing in the vast chamber. "Your capacity for survival is remarkable, but it raises questions." "What kind of questions?" I asked, stepping forward. The being hesitated, its colors flickering. "Your methods, they are aggressive, predatory. Most species seek harmony with their environments. You, however, dominate them. This is unusual." I met its gaze, or at least what I assumed was its gaze. On Earth, survival isn't a negotiation. It's a struggle. We learned early that the only way to survive is to adapt, to fight, and to win. That's who we are. The chamber filled with a low hum, a ripple of unease passing through the gathered Concordians. They weren't used to this, I realized. They weren't used to species that refused to accept the roles assigned to them. Behind me, Maria spoke up. "You wanted to see what we're capable of. Now you know. We're not prey." The manta-like leader's colors darkened slightly, a sign of contemplation or perhaps concern. "Predators," it said softly, almost to itself. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. I could see it in their reactions, in the way the other species shifted and murmured among themselves. To be a predator was to be a threat, something that needed to be controlled or eliminated. But there was something else in the room too, something I hadn't noticed before. Among the whispers and glances, a few of the species seemed curious. Their movements were subtle, their postures less wary and more intrigued. It was a small thing, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The Concordians might have been unnerved by what they saw in us, but not everyone viewed it as a danger. To some, it was something else entirely. A spark, a possibility. The first of the sunburst passed them by. I, soaked with sweat, changed into my traveling clothes and trotted away. As we were escorted back to our quarters, I felt the weight of the situation pressing down on me. This wasn't just a test of survival. It was a test of identity. They were trying to fit us into a box, to label us as either prey to be managed or predators to be neutralized. But what they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was that we were neither. We were something new, something they had never encountered before, and that terrified them. The atmosphere in our quarters had shifted. What had started as curiosity and cautious optimism among us had now transformed into something more guarded, even defiant. We knew they were watching us closely, dissecting every decision we made, every word we spoke. The Concordians were trying to decide what to do with us, and the weight of that realization hung over every conversation. It was late when the first visitor came. The room's automated lighting dimmed, signaling rest hours, but I couldn't sleep. I sat by the wide, transparent wall that overlooked the station's inner workings, watching ships glide gracefully into the docks. That's when I heard the sound, a faint, rhythmic tapping. I turned, expecting to see one of the other delegates, but instead, I was met with something else entirely. The creature stood at the edge of the room, its many legs clicking against the floor in a delicate rhythm. It resembled a crystalline centipede, its body refracting the dim light into shimmering rainbows. The others stirred as it approached, its movements careful and deliberate. A few of the delegates reached for makeshift weapons, pieces of furniture or tools we had managed to keep from the simulations. I raised a hand to calm them. "I am like here," it said, its voice resonating like wind chimes. "I speak for those who cannot." The translator devices struggled to keep up with its tonal complexity, but the message was clear. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. His body shifted slightly, its crystalline plates clicking together. "I want to warn you, and to ask for your help." "Warn us about what?" Maria asked, stepping forward. The alien hesitated, its colors dimming momentarily. "The Concordia fears you. They are deciding whether you are too dangerous to join. If they deem you a threat, they will act swiftly." The room fell silent. We had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed sent a chill through all of us. "And you want our help?" I pressed, narrowing my eyes. Lakiri's body brightened faintly. "There are many among the Concordia who are like me, those who have lived in the shadow of its power, those who have watched their world subjugated. To them, you are a beacon, a spark they thought had been extinguished long ago." "What are you saying?" Ahmed asked, his voice cautious but intrigued. "I am saying that not all species are content with the status quo," Lakir replied. "You have shown something we thought impossible, that the Concordia's power can be challenged. If you stand, others will stand with you." The weight of its words settled over us. This wasn't just about passing a test or proving ourselves worthy of joining their coalition. This was about breaking a system, about standing up to an empire that had quietly controlled the galaxy for millennia. "What happens if we refuse?" I asked. Lakir's body dimmed again, the light within it flickering like a dying flame. "Then you will face them alone. Then you will fall." It left as silently as it had arrived, disappearing into the station's labyrinthine corridors. The room remained quiet for a long time after, the delegates lost in thought. "They're using us," Maria finally said, breaking the silence. "Likir and the others, they want us to fight their fight, for them." "Maybe," I admitted, "but maybe we need them just as much as they need us." The group murmured in agreement. It was true. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in a situation we barely understood. If there was even a chance that Likir and its allies could tip the scales in our favor, we couldn't ignore it. Whatever we decide, Ahmed said, his voice steady, we need to be prepared. They're right about one thing. The Concordia isn't going to let us walk away unchallenged. That night, we began planning. It wasn't much at first, quiet conversations and whispered ideas, but it was enough to plant the seeds. If the Concordia thought we were dangerous before, they hadn't seen anything yet. As I lay awake, staring out at the endless expanse of stars beyond the station, one thought kept running through my mind. We hadn't come this far just to be silenced. If the Concordia wanted a fight, they were about to learn exactly what humanity was capable of. The decision wasn't easy, but it felt inevitable. Humanity had been placed in a position where survival depended on more than compliance. If we bowed to the Concordia's fears, we would forever be seen as a species that could be controlled, managed, or worse, eliminated if deemed too inconvenient. But if we stood our ground, we would send a message not just to the Concordia, but to every species watching from the shadows. Humanity was here to claim its place, not beg for it. The first step was understanding what we were up against. The Concordia wasn't a single entity. It was an intricate network of thousands of species, all bound by rules designed to maintain order and stability. At its core, however, it was clear there was a hierarchy. The most powerful species dictated the terms, and the weaker ones followed out of necessity or fear. Likir's warning had revealed cracks in that system, cracks we could exploit. We began gathering intelligence in ways that felt almost laughable against the Concordia's advanced surveillance. Small conversations with sympathetic representatives, studying the station's architecture for weaknesses, and carefully observing the movements of our guards. It was risky, but necessity sharpened our instincts. Humanity had always thrived under pressure, and this was no different. The more we learned, the more we realized the precariousness of the Concordia's position. Despite its size and technological superiority, it was built on a foundation of fear and compliance. Species like Lakers had endured subjugation for centuries, their individuality crushed under the weight of conformity. They longed for something different, something that could disrupt the cycle. The tipping point came during what the Concordia called the final assessment. It was a grand event, a showcase where new species demonstrated their worthiness to join the coalition. The assembly hall was packed with representatives, their alien forms a riot of colors, shapes, and sounds. We stood at the center of the hall, surrounded by projections of Earth, its history, its people, and its struggles. The Concordians watched us with an intensity that made my skin crawl. The manta-like leader floated forward, its body glowing faintly as it addressed us. "You have proven your capacity to survive," it said, its voice carrying through the chamber. "But survival is not enough. The Concordia values harmony above all else. We must know if you can integrate, if you can adapt to our way of life without disruption." Their expectation that we would submit, that we would conform to their carefully crafted system. I stepped forward, my voice steady as I replied. "Harmony is a fine ideal, but it's not built on silence. It's built on understanding, on strength, and on the ability to stand firm in the face of challenge." The room buzzed with energy, an undercurrent of unease rippling through the gathered species. I could see it in their reactions, some recoiling, others leaning forward with interest. "You speak of strength," the leader said, its colors darkening. "But strength without restraint is a threat. How can we trust that you will not disrupt the balance we have maintained for millennia?" I met its gaze, unflinching. Because balance isn't maintained by suppressing strength. It's maintained by embracing it. Humanity doesn't seek to dominate the Concordia, but we won't be tamed either. If you truly value harmony, you'll recognize that it requires more than compliance. It requires resilience and the courage to grow together. The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, I thought they might strike us down then and there, but then a faint sound broke the tension. A rhythmic clicking. Lycure had stepped forward, its crystalline body catching the light as it spoke. "Humanity is right," it said, its voice clear and resolute. "The Concordia has grown stagnant, afraid of anything that challenges its comfort. But stagnation is the death of progress. Perhaps it is time we listen to those who remind us of what we have forgotten." Lycure's words sent shockwaves through the room. More voices joined in, hesitant at first but growing bolder. Representatives from other species began to speak, their words a mix of cautious support and outright defiance of the status quo. The Concordia leader shifted uncomfortably, its colors flickering. It was losing control of the narrative, and it knew it. That night, as we returned to our quarters, I felt a flicker of hope. Humanity had done more than survive. We had ignited something. The Concordia wasn't as monolithic as it appeared, and cracks were beginning to show. But I also knew the fight wasn't over. If the Concordia saw us as too great a threat, it wouldn't hesitate to act. The challenge now was not just to survive, but to prove that humanity could rise without falling into the trap of domination. The stars beyond the station seemed closer than ever, their light a reminder of the vast possibilities ahead. We were predators, yes, but we were also something more, and the galaxy was starting to see it. The station's artificial dawn came too quickly, its soft glow filtering through the walls of our quarters. Rest had been fleeting, stolen in fragments between whispered plans and tense silences. None of us could fully relax, not when we knew the Concordia's decision loomed. Lycure had risked everything by speaking out, and though their words had stirred some support, it was clear the ruling species of the Concordia were still deliberating and growing increasingly wary. When the summons came, it was not a request. Concordian enforcers, towering beings clad in shimmering exosuits, arrived at our quarters. Their presence left no room for negotiation. We were to appear before the High Tribunal, the ultimate authority of the Concordia, a council that rarely convened but wielded absolute power when it did. The walk to the tribunal chamber felt endless. The station's labyrinthine corridors, usually humming with activity, were eerily quiet. It wasn't until we entered the vast domed chamber that I understood why. The entire station had seemingly gathered here. Thousands of alien species filled the tiers of seating that stretched into the heights, their collective presence a weight that pressed down on us as we stepped into the center of the room. The High Tribunal itself was a semicircle of elevated platforms, each occupied by a representative of one of the Concordia's most powerful species. At the center sat the mantle-like leader we had come to associate with the Concordia's will, its translucent form glowing with somber hues. "Humans of Earth," it began, its voice resonating with a gravity that demanded attention. "You stand here today not merely as candidates for integration, but as a question, a challenge. Your survival has proven your capability, but your methods and philosophy have sown discord among the Concordia. We must decide whether you are a threat too great to tolerate." Its words struck like a hammer, but I refused to let them break me. This was no longer just about humanity's inclusion. This was about survival, about proving we deserved not just to exist, but to thrive on our own terms. I stepped forward, feeling the eyes of thousands upon me. "You fear us because we don't fit into your system," I said, my voice steady despite the pressure. But let me ask you this. Has your system truly brought peace, or has it merely silenced dissent? You claim to value harmony, yet you crush those who dare to challenge your ways. Is that harmony or stagnation? The room erupted into murmurs, a cacophony of voices that the translators struggled to keep up with. The tribunal members exchanged glances, their alien forms shifting uncomfortably. You speak of stagnation, the mantle-like leader said, its colors darkening. But disruption is dangerous. Conflict has destroyed civilizations before. What makes humanity different? What makes you worth the risk? I took a deep breath, knowing this was the moment that would define everything. Because humanity has faced conflict for as long as we've existed. We've fought wars, endured catastrophes, and risen from the ashes time and again. We don't fear change, we embrace it. We adapt. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us strong. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, slowly, Lakir emerged from the shadows of the crowd. Its crystalline body caught the light as it spoke, its voice ringing clear. What humanity says is true. We have forgotten how to adapt, how to grow. We have let fear dictate our actions for too long. Perhaps it is time we remembered that strength is not the enemy of harmony, but its foundation. Others began to rise, their voices joining Lakir's. Species that had remained silent for centuries now spoke out, their words a mix of hope and defiance. The room shifted, the balance of power tipping ever so slightly. The tribunal leader's glow flickered, its form tense as it addressed us one final time. Very well, humanity, you have made your case. The Concordia will deliberate, but know this. Your actions have already changed much. For better or worse, the future will not remain as it was. We were escorted back to our quarters, the weight of the moment settling over us. The decision would not come immediately, but we had done all we could. As the door closed behind us, Maria exhaled sharply. "Do you think they'll accept us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ahmed shook his head. "I don't think it matters anymore. Whatever happens, we've shown them we won't be ignored." He was right. This was no longer about acceptance. This was about showing the galaxy what humanity stood for. As I looked out at the stars beyond the station, I felt a strange sense of calm. No matter what the Concordia decided, one thing was certain. Humanity would not back down. We were predators, not prey, and the galaxy was starting to understand what that meant. The decision came the next day, announced in the same solemn tones that had marked every interaction with the Concordia. We were summoned to the assembly hall, where the gathered species waited in tense anticipation. The air was heavy, thick with the unspoken understanding that whatever verdict the Concordia delivered would ripple far beyond the walls of the station. The manta-like leader floated forward, its luminous body pulsing with subdued hues. It paused, as if the weight of the moment required an extra beat of silence. When it finally spoke, its voice echoed through the chamber, amplified and translated for all present. "Humans of Earth," it began, "your arrival has shaken the foundations of the Concordia. You have proven your resilience, your ingenuity, and your strength. Yet, you have also sown discord, challenged our traditions, and raised questions that many find uncomfortable." The words hung in the air like a blade poised to fall. I braced myself, every muscle tensed as if preparing for the inevitable blow. The leader continued, its tones measured and deliberate. "After extensive deliberation, the Concordia has reached a decision. Humanity will not be integrated into our coalition as it currently stands." However, the pause was deliberate, calculated to let the single word ignite a spark of hope. You will not be expelled or destroyed. Instead, the Concordia will recognize your unique status. You are not prey, as many feared, nor are you merely predators. You are something new, something we must seek to understand rather than control. You will remain autonomous, free to chart your own path among the stars, but under watchful observation. A murmur spread through the chamber, a mix of relief, curiosity, and apprehension. I felt a wave of emotions crash over me. Relief that we had survived, pride that we had stood our ground, and an odd sense of unease at the ambiguous nature of the verdict. The leader's glow shifted to a deeper hue, signaling an end to the formalities. Know this, the Concordia will not tolerate recklessness. Your strength is acknowledged, but strength without wisdom can lead to ruin. Let your actions speak for your intentions. As the session adjourned, I felt the weight of countless eyes on us. Some were wary, others curious, and a few, like Curl, were filled with something that looked like hope. The delegation was led back to our quarters, where we could finally exhale. It's not acceptance, but it's not annihilation either, Ahmed said, leaning against the wall. It's a beginning, Maria replied, a chance to prove we can be more than what they fear. We spent the rest of the day preparing for our departure. The station had been our prison, our battleground, and our proving ground, but now it was simply a waypoint. The stars beyond were our true destination. As our ship undocked, I stood at the viewport, watching the Concordia station shrink into the void. The galaxy was vast, filled with challenges and opportunities we couldn't yet imagine, but we were ready. Humanity had always thrived on the edge of the unknown, and now, for the first time, we were free to claim our place among the stars. The Concordia had called us predators, but we knew the truth. We were survivors, innovators, explorers. And if the galaxy thought it had seen all we were capable of, it was in for a surprise. We had been tested, and we had emerged unbroken. The universe was vast, its dangers countless, but we would face them head-on. Earth bred predators, yes, but it also bred something more. It bred resilience. It bred hope. It bred humanity.